Got a review today on the channel. I got a brand new Hoyt GMX 3 series here and can't wait to unbox it and give you a first look at it and my first impressions as to the quality of this riser here. So I have the axial limbs on order as well, but they have not yet been shipped. They're still on back order. I personally purchased these, so they're not coming from Hoyt at all. They are straight from the distributor. And yeah, I originally ordered slate, but I saw it was still on back order when orange was available, and I said, hey, orange looks really good too. So I have no idea when the axial limbs are coming, the new syntactic foam limbs. But I'm excited to get my hands on those and review those as well on the channel. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to unbox this and we're going to check out some features on the bow. We'll get a close-up look over the bench as well. And yeah, just tell you my first impressions of the GMX 3 series. The GMX original riser was one of my favorite bows that I ever shot. Felt very nice. Obviously, it's still very popular around the world. And just like many other people, I wonder what happened to the GMX 2 series. Got your manual inside of the, oh, you got a new bunch of stickers, which is pretty cool. Just some basic stickers, various different looks of different bows from the past, at least most recent past. Safety and warnings manual. So it is not a recurve manual. It is nothing more than a bunch of disclaimers for you to make sure you pay attention to. Inside the actual packaging, you do get a embroidered keychain. Get serious, get Hoyt. And all the breastplates, high, medium, and low, with the hardware for that. 3 different sizes, basic Allen keys. Still get your free Hoyt Super Rest and the spacers for the limb rockers and a clicker set screw. So there's no recurve manual anymore. They're probably going to digital only. And inside, oh wow, the orange looks way better in person than I thought it would. This thing is very iridescent. I didn't plan on wearing a shirt that was nearly the same color, but that is one heck of a finish on the bow itself. The orange is loud. Kind of was hoping it was anodized just because I remember the orange anodization that they did on the Formula RX, which looked really, really good. This does look good too, though. The actual color to the bow is quite nice. The finish on it, as expected, is phenomenal. Even inside little areas where they couldn't really get a buffer or anything, or the tumbling media, which would have a potential hard time getting into some spots, it is very smooth throughout. Let's see here. It's a warranty and more disclaimers. Get that out of the way. They dropped some of the branding from the pocket area. Obviously, there's many new features on this bow, and we'll go over them once we get you over the bench. But just looking at it off the hop and taking a quick look at it, everything looks very even. The chamfers, the radiuses, everything looks very even left to right. When you go from the flat spot to the sides, both sides, how does the arc, the radius, look from right to left? On older bows like this one behind me, which is from 2012, all the bows were hand polished, hand buffed, and there was a lot of concern that I had that some sides were radiused more than the others because they would spend more time buffing on this side, removing more material than the others, and you could genuinely see a massive difference between the two. And I'm not seeing a difference between the two pretty much anywhere on the bow itself. All the way down the riser, everywhere, it is really good. Looks good. I see not a single tool mark anywhere. I'm sure I could probably find some if I were to pull the stuff out of the pocket, like the 360-degree dampener, things like that. it'll be interesting to see once I pull this thing apart and do some measurements and some checks. Looks pretty good. Very sharp, and I like the initial quality. I think, you know, you're getting a good piece for the money spent. It looks GMX-esque for sure, and also some of the new modern things going on. This is changed up in the top. Supposedly it has a lower grip, lower pivot point, just like the XD riser, the XD formula riser. Before I go over all of the features on this bow, I'm going to reposition the camera over the bench so that way we can get a little bit better view for you, so I don't have to constantly get the camera to focus with my hands. All right, now we got you here over the bench. Before I get into the bow, bit of a close-up here of what you get. All sorts of different Allen keys, the Hoyt Super Rest with the foam bits, and brass shims, which go underneath these things here. The limb rockers, or the performance setting of the limbs, I don't know what you want to call them. I don't know what Hoyt calls them anymore. But basically you can adjust those and pivot the limbs to align them when you have a twist in the limb. Then you have your 3 different rest plates, high, medium, and low, which bolt into place here, and the hardware to capture it and lock everything into place. We'll grab a couple of tools here and check out some things that I want to look at on the riser itself. So it is a 25-inch riser. From this perspective, you can really see how tall the top is compared to the bottom, showing you how much the grip is lowered relative to the center line of the bow. So I don't know where the center of the actual bow is, but it looks like it's pretty much near the shelf, maybe a little bit more towards the actual arrow plate itself. I'll do some measurements. Actually, I'll see if I have my ruler here, which I do, and we'll see roughly where we're at. So center of the bow is right here. So just above the actual pivot point of the bow is the actual center line of the center of the riser. So if I measure from the lock here to about here on the grip, that's about 11.5 inches to about there. And then if I put this at 11.5, that puts me right about there. So that is the center line of the bow. So for reference, just for whatever it's worth, that's where the middle of the bow is. Now, for a quick comparison, here is a Exceed laid right next to it. But now you can really see the difference in the actual bow. I see it mostly in the plate here is lower. Yeah, let me lay these side by side. I do have the LPP on this Exceed, the Archery lower pivot point grip, which simulates this bow, the GMX 3 series geometry. And you can actually see that where the difference is indeed in the grip. My LPP puts the pivot point pretty much at exactly the same place that the XD and the GMX 3 series is. So you can see how my lower pivot point grip has modified the geometry almost exactly what they've done there at Hoyt. But when you look at the difference there in the actual rest position, the clicker plate that I have on the Exceed here is the middle. So you can see how much that is lowered, pretty much looking like almost a 1/4 inch lower. Yeah, it's right about a 1/4 inch as far as how much lower the actual rest location is, and most likely the actual pivot point location. Really quick, seeing how I did show you this. This is the Archery LPP lowered pivot point grip. If you're interested in these grips or any of the grips that Archery does have available on their website, I'll have links in the description below where you can grab Archery grips. And if you use code Kaminski at checkout, you get 10% off, and not just on my grips, any of the products that they sell on their website. So the riser, like I said, the finish on it, the surface finish is absolutely impeccable. This orange is almost like color shifting because of the flake pigment that's in it. It's almost a golden chromy orange when you look at it from this angle, and you can see how much it flashes on the camera. And look at the radius edges. See how they're very deep orange, and then now everything turns deep orange and wants to turn back to flashy orange. This is a great looking color. I don't know how it will be in the sun as far as when you're shooting it outside, so that'll be interesting to pay attention to. So within the pocket, some things that are new for the ILF or Grand Prix version for Hoyt, that's what they call the ILF stuff, is this 360-degree dampener, this Pro Series pivot area where you can adjust the settings from performance to more soft feeling, which actually does make a considerable difference as far as how the bow feels itself. And they now have some tiller bolts that look mighty, mighty familiar and are made out of nitride-coated stainless steel. So I'm going to pull those out and check them in a second. But gosh, doesn't that just look similar? And there are some striking resemblance as far as familiarity there between the two. So I want to do a couple checks. Like I said, new on these tiller bolts is a laser marked for radial indications of where you turn your limb bolts to, tiller bolts, whatever you want to call them. So that way it makes tuning easier. So it is a very, very good idea. It is absolutely something that I think a lot of people in the archery community have been asking for a very long time. And I'm happy that Hoyt is making changes such as this. They're upping their quality on some of the small features of the riser that actually makes the user experience a little bit more friendly and easier to actually replicate when you're making adjustments and changes and setups. So I'm very happy, and I'm actually very flattered and feel very justified in doing the work with the precision tiller bolt that is available on my website, jkaminski.com, in case you're interested in picking up your own set of Kaminski precision tiller bolts that fit all 2009 plus Hoyt risers. So if you're like, man, I really, really wish I had these tiller bolts, you can get them right now on my website and at a few different locations, including Lancaster. So what I'm going to do here is I want to measure the outside diameter of the shank where the limb fork actually goes into like this, because I know that the fit of that component of your limb and riser interface are absolutely paramount to accuracy and consistency and grouping downrange. So I really want to see if Hoyt did their job and made some changes in the actual tiller bolt design, in addition to the actual laser etching, which makes things a little bit easier to work on. Everything zeroed out and in inches. And I'm getting 371.5 thousandths of an inch. Due to what I know about the specs of this tiller bolt and what ILF standards call for, this bolt is a little bit undersized. And so what I was really looking for here is to see, is the shank of the tiller bolt itself within spec for ILF guidelines. It's supposed to be about 375 thousandths of an inch. So this bolt here is laser etched 380. I don't know if you can see that because it's so bright because it's shiny. But these are 380 thousandths of an inch guaranteed. And this one is for a Hoyt bow. It's 379.5 thousandths of an inch. Even if I reposition it in several different places, it's still going to be within 379 to 380 guaranteed. And here's a 375. This one's for a win-and-win and also does fit the SF product line, at least the new ones. 374.5 thousandths of an inch. If I reposition, yeah, I knew this one was 374 thousandths of an inch, which again is still within spec, because when it's marked 375, that means it's 374 to 375. So very similar to the top. So they're consistent from top to bottom, but still not quite what I would really want to see. You're paying for a premium quality piece of equipment here, and the fitment of the limb fork into the actual limb bolt itself like that is so critical, because if there's a gap, it allows the limb to shift, which changes your limb alignment, which changes your center shot, which changes your groups left to right downrange. I've shot a bow that had a 8 thousandths of an inch gap, I believe. It was not more than 10, and it was definitely more than 7. And when I would shift the limbs this way versus this way, my groups would change about this far down at 70 meters, which is a huge amount. And it's not something I'm interested in having in an absolute premium, high dollar quality piece of equipment. I want to see tighter fit and finish. I want to see tighter tolerances when it comes to the crucial parts of the actual bow itself. Now, in addition to the tiller bolts being marked themselves, they're made out of stainless steel. Stainless steel tends to absorb a little bit more vibration than aluminum because it's denser, it's heavier, and anything that has a heavier mass absorbs more vibration. So the bow will feel better overall because of the actual mass of the limb bolt itself. And you also have this fancy 360-degree limb pocket dampening deal that just pops right out, and you could bolt in riser weights. I still don't see a single tool mark, machine mark, or anything. Again, I don't know what Hoyt's doing, but the finish on this riser is just flawless. They do a phenomenal job and have made massive, massive strides over the years to make the finish of the bow absolutely impeccable and even on both sides, from what I can tell. When I get the Axia limbs, we'll see how they fit into this actual bow. Maybe they're very, very tight and will fit this tiller bolt very well, but we'll just have to wait to see to find that. So one thing that I did notice that probably is nitpicking, but I like to look for these kinds of things and just try to find any kind of flaw possible. If you look at the laser indications on the tiller bolt itself, you'll see that the numbers aren't exactly even as far as set in the center. So you can see this one's much better. If you can use the reference of the 6 there, you'll see how the 6 is on that raised area, the 2, 8, and 4 are. And they're all roughly in the center of those ears, whatever you want to call them, that come off from the side there. And then you compare here. Look at this one. 6 is off center, 2 is off center, 8, 4. They're all off center because they are clocked slightly off. And for me, pet peeve, if I'm going to see these raised sections and I'm going to see laser etchings, I want to see that mark dead in the center because, I don't know, I like that level of detail. I like that attention to detail, more importantly. As far as the actual quality of the riser is concerned, I think you're absolutely getting what you pay for. You are paying a premium. You're getting a really, really good looking finished bow here. You're getting a lot of features on the bow itself. The adjustment system to align the limbs is absolutely unparalleled in the industry as far as flexibility is concerned. To shift the limb laterally, rock it, and twist it to correct a twist in a limb or a manufacturer's issue, and to be able to adjust the actual performance of the limb, going from performance setting to the middle to the soft setting, actually makes the limbs feel stiffer or softer through the clicker zone, so it can really dramatically affect the way the bow actually feels. Underneath the riser, or grip, pretty standard, just like everything else. Oh, and there's your first machine marks that you can see anywhere on the riser. It's somewhere that doesn't matter, and you can see some tool pathways there, but you know, that's nothing to be really concerned with. So they really must have spent their time to slow the feeds and speeds down to just take their time to machined. They must have really just slowed their speeds and feeds down to really take their time through the visible areas of the actual riser and bow itself. And like I said, I've not seen a cleaner Hoyt in regards to the finish on the actual bow itself. The grip is still your standard Hoyt grip, which is fine for beginners and people who haven't shot a ton, I guess. I don't know how many people really, really like these grips. There's a lot to be desired in regards to this area here to have a build-up to kind of fill the void that when you put your hand in the proper placement on the grip, there's always a void right here. The grip itself, the flatness, the slope, the angle, all those things I am absolutely a fan of. I just wish, at least in this area here, they would do a little bit of work to make it fit more people's hands a little bit more friendly there. Overall, I'm very excited and can't wait for my Axia limbs to come in, the foam ones, the syntactic foam core limbs, and be able to shoot these on this riser. I could set this riser up with another set of limbs, but I figure I might as well wait. There's never C's all over the place. That stuff has a half-life. I think it's a very high quality piece. Like I said, it's probably the best riser I've seen so far from Hoyt as far as the finish is concerned. So within the next few videos, I plan on setting up and shooting this bow. And if I don't get shipment confirmation here very shortly with some limbs, I'm going to put a set of limbs in this bow and shoot it anyway and set it up for Olympic style recurve and test it out and see what I really think about it. So I couldn't contain myself and built this bow up with a set of limbs that I already have here. These are the Win & Win NS limbs. I really like these limbs. Yes, there's some newer limbs from Win & Win, the MXT XPs. They work great too. but I wanted to try these. I wanted to shoot them, and I've already got everything all set up preliminarily. I haven't shot yet. I did do some warm-up, but basically I aligned the limbs, everything aligned just fine. As usual, this limb alignment system is perfect. It's very, very easy and simple to use, and I mean, everything was just there. The only thing that I did have to adjust was my knocking points. I had to move them down considerably, obviously because of the lowered pivot point, lowered arrow point as well, where the plunger is. I put the middle plunger plate on, and yeah, everything else is about the same. I do have the limb bolts out as far as they'll go right now, and my tiller was perfect right where I want it to be. I'm going to try shooting these 450 X10s and see if I can get them to tune. I'm here at 30 meters, and I have a camera downrange, so you'll be able to see the impact points the entire time. And I'm going to get this bow tuned up and give you some feedback as to how it feels. I did put the R-Core recurve grip on. I didn't put the LPP on. It's already got the lowered pivot point, so I don't need to go any further. Although one day I probably will, of course, because if a little bit is maybe better, then why not take it even further? So if you're interested in any of these R-Core grips that are available, like I said before, you can use code Kaminski at checkout and click that link in the description below. Both of those things massively help this channel out. You'll get 10% off as well at their website from everything they offer. I don't have a sight tape on this, so I'm gonna just take a wild guess and hopefully I hit the bail. All right, wasn't too far off. There is definitely can feel that the riser is very top heavy. There is a lot of mass above the grip. That is a 122 centimeter face down there for reference, in case you're wondering. I'll shoot a couple bear shafts. All right, I'm gonna go get those arrows, but first, my first initial impression as far as how it feels fairly stable at full draw. These limbs stack a little bit more than some of the more modern limbs, so through the clicker it's a little more solid, so I would expect to feel that stability. I do notice a lot of mass weight in the top of the riser. At least it feels that way, although I think some of it is genuinely that I can see it because it is so bright, and there's just, it feels like there's a lot going on above the grip. At least, I don't know which is what, if I actually feel it or if just because I see it, I feel more. The bow on action, as far as the release is concerned, it's very dead, very little residual vibration. There is some medium frequency shaking going on, although, you know, with it not being totally dialed in 100% for this exact riser, there could be some things that I'm just a little bit off on as far as maybe brace height or things like that, because I haven't spent that time to figure that out yet. The bow, though, does not jump very hard. It's something that I am very accustomed to lately and do like a lot. Some of the other manufacturers, the bows tend to jump much harder out of the hand, like the Win-N-Wins. But this one right now is just not jumping super hard. I will pay attention to the actual sight picture, because with this lowered pivot point, I should need to run a little bit more weight on the end of the stabilizer, the long rod. And if my sight picture is kind of confirming that after I get it tuned in, that may change the way the bow jumps out of the hand. But as of right now, it just doesn't feel to me like it's jumping very hard. There's not much authority to the actual delivery of the arrow per se. It's not a bad thing. It's just not as aggressive of a setup that I've been shooting as of late. Although it does still feel good, again, because of that little bit of vibration that there is. I'm gonna go get the arrows, move the camera to a different spot so you get a different view of the bow itself, and get this bow dialed in. All right, so the bear shafts, one was a little stiff and a little high, and the other one was right in there. So I don't know which one to use. I'm gonna shoot another end here without making any adjustments. It's very, very quiet. No limb savers on this bow, so considering that, it is probably one of the quietest bows I've shot without limb savers. They're flying pretty good. Maybe I'm changing my mind as far as residual vibration. There's really not even middle frequency. I'm not feeling really anything at all. It's just, it feels very refined. I've used the word in the past, but it sure feels like really, really good as far as the vibration dampening properties after the shot's concerned. Even though on that one I wasn't very stable myself, the bow did not want to move a whole lot. So that's a good thing. That's a very, very good thing. The bow, the stability kind of took out a little bit of my uneasiness, the shaking going on from being out of shooting shape. All right, I'm gonna go check that one. That one wasn't the greatest shot, but the bow feels very, very close. So right out of the box, being able to tie on knocking points with where my other bows shoot them well at, and put in a plunger that has a given spring tension that I like, and I don't know if I set my center shot. I should probably check that really quick. I think I forgot to set my center shot. So to have the bow doing that, and for me to not have set the center shot, that's pretty good. Although this plunger was previously used on an Exceed, so hopefully from the outside surface area of the sight window to the center line of the bow, where the center shot should be, hopefully it's the same between the Exceed and this bow. I don't see why it would have changed. That's probably one of the parameters that Hoyt would keep consistent from setup to setup, bow to bow, just to make things easier. So maybe that's the case, because nothing feels off and the arrow flight's already very, very close. But still, the bow just doesn't jump. It holds okay. I think I need a much smaller target or to shoot at 70 meters to really get a much better idea as to the aiming properties. Again, like I said, the stabilizer setup to maybe help with that jumping. But it just doesn't want to fly out of my hand as I like. I like to feel it launch out, and I haven't yet shot enough good and bad shots to get an idea as to if the feedback it's giving me is sufficient to the level that I like. It does clean up quite a considerable amount, like I said, while at full draw, so maybe it'll do the same on release. So I went and checked, and my center shot is exactly where I want it to be. The Exceed to this riser must be the same, at least from the outside of the sight window to the center line of the bow. I don't know about any of the other bows out there, but definitely that's the case for this one here. Now already I am seeing the sight picture kind of float a little bit too much. It's a little too floaty. It wants to go up. So I did add 1 ounce to the long rod to hopefully get this bow jumping a little bit harder, and we'll see how it goes, because as it was just not launching nearly as aggressively as I'm used to. This is probably one of the more dead bows, not just in vibration properties, but in actual launching dynamic jumping properties that I've shot in quite some time. The bow just doesn't really want to jump out of my hand all that much, and it's a little bit surprising actually. It definitely holds a little bit better. I don't know if I'd say it jumps anymore. Yeah, definitely. It's not that it's unpleasant, it just doesn't launch and hit the end of my finger sling like I've grown accustomed to lately. And it could be the limbs. It could be just the way that these limbs react. They don't jump as hard. We'll find out when the Axia foams arrive. Definitely is very, very quiet though. I like it a lot. That was not a good shot. You cannot make a mistake when shooting a bear shaft. But I don't know if you heard, the bow definitely had a different sound to it, so I think it will give some feedback when less than ideal shots are made. That's a good thing. I definitely like to have a little bit of feedback, but nothing overly harsh and punishing. I think if you do a good job setting up your bow preliminarily, good limb alignment, good brace height, good tiller split, things like that, then the bow, generally speaking, will give you mild amounts of feedback. But even with riser dampeners and things like that, I can still hear some difference. Not necessarily feel some difference yet, but definitely hear some difference from shot to shot. I think, based on what I see down there, that everything is set up probably better than what I'm going to be able to do. So, depending on how things look over the next couple of days, as far as tracking is concerned, if I get some sort of notification that my Axia limbs are on the way, then I may wait to shoot a 70-meter round until they arrive. But depending on my patience and how long it takes, I may end up shooting these limbs out of this bow at 70 meters, get a 36 arrow round for score, because shooting a little bit more arrows at a longer distance definitely tends to give me a little bit more in the way of feedback as far as what the bow's actually doing and its behavior and mannerisms. So that'll come at a later date. I don't know when, and I don't know which limbs yet I'll be doing it with, but as far as the overall experience with the GMX 3 series, number one, the color is very eye-catching. It is popping like crazy. This orange is ridiculous. Everything else that I've come to know and expect with Hoyts lately is there. Pretty much everything, actually. So the limb adjustment system, super easy to use, super friendly, no problems there. The actual finish of the riser is one of the best, if not the best, finished Hoyt out there as far as the actual appearance of the riser is concerned. The lowered pivot point, don't know if I like it or hate it at this point. I did like it in my past, shooting the LPP grip on my my Prodigy, I believe, when I was at the Rio Games. I really liked that grip. I liked the feeling of the lowered pivot point, but it left the arrow at a higher altitude, a much higher point, and I shot the high plate on top of that, whereas now it brings down the grip and the arrow in unison together about a 1/4 inch. Pretty much the exact same amount that the LPP grip does as well, which is funny. But I'm not sure if I like that, because I haven't shot it a lot, to be totally frank with you, so I don't know if it would actually perform better or worse, or be more forgiving or less forgiving. No way to know, with the exception of doing it a lot and shooting more arrows over a longer period of time. Other features, like the new tiller bolts, they are nice to have with the laser etchings. There's some room for improvement there, as we've gone over. All things being said, the bow feels quite good. Jumps, not so hard. It is very dead, no vibration, a little bit of feedback, which is good. Easy to set up. Overall, a pleasure to shoot. I did need 1 ounce more on my long rod to settle down the aiming, but it did nothing for the actual jumping properties. It's just very dead. Could be because of these limbs, and we'll find out when we put a different set into them. Really quick, if you'd like to learn how to tune and set up your Olympic-style recurve just like I do, I'm going to recommend a book I wrote called Tuning for Performance. I take you through, step by step, my methodology and how I set up and tune Olympic-style recurves from out of the box to going and competing with them at the Olympic Games. How to sort arrows and how to do various different things on your equipment to make it behave and be very, very happy, just like I did in this video. I didn't have to do much in the way of actual tuning because I did my job setting up the bow exactly how I normally set things up and paid attention to the details that really matter in my preliminary setup phase, and it made the bow basically be tuned right out of the box. I ended up shooting this bow at 70 meters. This is the last end that I shot for a 72 arrow scoring round. I will upload that video within the next couple days, so be sure to hit the subscription button and the notification bell down below so that way you get notified when that video goes live. If you like this video, consider sharing it. Genuinely, it helps this channel out. I don't run any other social media. I've completely cut it out of my life entirely, with the exception of producing YouTube content here for you guys for free. Genuinely, it's the only way that this channel will grow is if you share these videos, you subscribe and hit that notification bell down below. Also consider supporting this channel. There's many different links in the description. And I produce, like I said, all this content for free for archers around the world to enjoy. This is really one of the only channels that I'm going to give you unbiased feedback and reviews as far as equipment is concerned, because I am not sponsored and I specifically disallow any and all sponsorships. If I have any sort of relationship with them, if they sent me the bow, I will tell you. I paid for this bow myself, and I can't thank my supporters enough because you are the one that makes this channel possible.